All right, we are live. Hello, hello, coaches. I'm so excited to have you all here and to introduce you to Safiya Robinson. She is
Hi.
a story listener, an author, and a writing coach, and a very special person to me and has helped me through writing my own book. And today she is so graciously going to teach us about how to get started with writing your first book. The reason that I asked her to join me in on this Facebook Live is because, this whole community is life coaches. Some of you are new life coaches, some of you experienced life coaches, but what I find with life coaches is that a lot of us have these big life stories, and it's what leads us to becoming a coach in the first place, because we want to help others through our pain and struggles that we've been through. And then a lot of times we often feel compelled to put our stories into a book to create a bigger impact and to be able to help people on a bigger scale and to leave a lasting legacy even when we leave this earth someday. So that's why we're going to talk about this today. And I would love, Safiya, for you to intro yourself as well and tell us about, how did you, and just so you all know too, Safiya and I met through the coach training program that we both got certified in. And so, Safiya, what led you down this path towards becoming a writing coach and working with this unique population?
A lot of it has to do with why I became a writer in the first place, which is that I really love the idea of, I always call it being an everyday storyteller. And I love the idea of people getting their stories out there. I think it's so important for other points of view, other lenses, other life experiences to be out there in the open for people to read. And I feel like it cuts through so many stereotypes. I feel like if it just expands how we see the world, and I just think it's so important, as you say, to leave a legacy for people who come after us. So that's one of the reasons I write. Mm-hmm. And so I love the idea of encouraging other people who wanted to, because I always loved writing, and I just kind of assumed that everybody loved writing and that everybody would write a book, and apparently that's not true. So I just wanted to start, I think I was really key to me when I was writing my book. I had a writing coach, and she was really key to me being able to self-publish my book, which I'm going to show off because I love showing off my book, because, there it is. And she was really pivotal in that. And so I was like, it's great to be able to walk people through that process. But I also, and this is something that I'm going to be adding into my business a bit more in the coming few months, it's also that aspect of visibility, because I think writing is one thing, but sharing is a whole other creature itself. And to me, the two go hand in hand, right? But there's so many things that come up when you think about sharing your story, when you think about, like writing a blog and hitting posts, or writing a social media post, or even like writing your book. You have this physical book, it's out there in the world, people have it, they're reading it. I don't know if we've got time for a story, but I can tell it later if I do. But when I first had finished writing my book, and I did a pre-sale kind of pre-order thing, and the first people who ordered it were my friends from university, and they were amazing friends when I was at university, but I was really super Christian, teaching Sunday school when I was at university, and I'm kind of there was a whole big chunk of my book about my spiritual journey, and I was just like, I don't know if I want them to read that. Should I take it out? Should I just edit that chapter out? So it brings up all of these fears of judgment and what are people going to say and what are people going to think. And so I want to add that piece in more with the coaching as well, because I think writing is one thing, but sharing is a whole another level. And I feel like it's those two levels that we really have to move through if we're going to make the impact that we want to make with our story.
Definitely. Oh, I love that. I can just tell how passionate you are about this. And this is truly your purpose on this earth. And not to mention that you are such a good writer too. I love reading your blogs, and Yeah, I'm so grateful that you're allowing yourself to help people in this way. And, you know, something too, when I was, you know, first deciding if I was going to write a book or not about my life story, and I was interviewing different editors and ghostwriters, and something she told me is that most people will talk about writing a book, but most people won't actually follow through with doing it. And so she said, if you have an actual, you know, published book, you are in the minority. And she like gave me an actual percentage.
3%.
Yeah. And it was
I did not realize that. I was like, 3?
Yeah.
So look, 3%. So I'm sorry, I just like to show off.
And
I won't do it again.
To me, that's mind blowing because, and you know, for me, I don't know if anyone's ever done Strength Finders, but I have competitiveness. How do you say that word? Competitiveness. I don't know. I can't say that right now. I have that in my top 5 as one of my strengths. And like the minute I heard that, I was like, oh, hell yeah.
I need to be in that top 3%.
I need to be in that top 3%. I do not want to be one of those people that's going around and be like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And I was like, oh, hell no. I'm writing a book no matter what it takes.
Yeah. And I'm so glad yours is almost, I can't wait to read yours. That's a whole other conversation that we're going to have when you're closer to launching it. Like, I hope you will allow me to interview you when you're about to launch.
Of course.
So as you said, I really thought we could chat a little bit more today about how to get started on that process. And one thing, you know, I just talked about why I write, and I can talk a little bit more about that. So I will talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. But I think the first thing you have to consider if you're going to write a book is, why are you writing? But remember, like, there's no bad reason, there's no good reason. But it's really important to know this when you start, because it is looking back to that why. Hello, Lincoln.
Just so everyone knows.
Noisy boy.
Here, we'll have everybody meet Lincoln really quick. So they're like, who's this random baby in the background?
He's so cute. I love it.
Oh, you're going to keep your binky in? Here's Lincoln.
With his little mustache.
His little new mustache binky.
I love it. This break is brought to you by a cute baby.
Future little life coach right here, world leader. The reason we named him Lincoln is after Abraham Lincoln. Great leader. So yeah, we got a future leader in the making right now.
Nice. Love it.
Okay.
And so that could be your why, but I think it's really, like I said, there's no bad why. There's no bad whys. Your why could be as simple as wanting to connect with your audience or with future clients. You might want to introduce your signature method or system. You might just want to share your story. You might love writing, or you might want to have something that you can reach a larger section of people at a smaller price point, right? If you have, something that you really want to share and you want to impact a huge number of people, a book is an amazing way to do that. So there's no bad reasons. I started writing because I loved writing. No bad reasons at all. Why did you decide to write your book, Krista? I'm so curious.
Okay, so it sounds like, just to recap, so if you're thinking about writing a book, the first thing is you have to kind of figure out your why.
Yeah, Simon Sinek always says start with why, and it's a good place to start.
Exactly, absolutely. That's what I always say when I'm coaching people: is find your why. Once you find your why, it's like your true North Star, right? Yeah. Well, for me, why did I write my book? Well, I wanted to be in that top 3%. And I also, I had some really big things happen to me in life. And I was just like, you know what? I can't let this story die with me. This story is meant to be shared with so many different people. Sorry, trying to feed Lincoln while we're doing this. This is for everyone watching right now. If you're a mom, you probably get it. You try to multitask.
Yep. Mommy in motion.
Feed your child and change the world at the same time. It's very interesting. So, what's wrong, bud? What's wrong, buddy? But yeah, so I just felt like, all these things happen for a reason, and I was meant to put them in a book, and I felt like I wasn't going to be able to sleep at night or move on with my life until it did so. It was just such this strong feeling, this intuitive feeling of like, you have to write a book. And it was bugging me over and over again. And so, as I said, I believe that everything is so like divinely timed by the universe. And I was to make this a short story, but I connected with this woman on Facebook, and she was running a Facebook group, and she was a coach, and she was interviewing me about my coaching business. And then all of a sudden she's like, I feel like you're meant to meet my friend. And I was like, oh, who's your friend? And she's like, oh, well, she helps women become authors. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I would love to meet her. And so she introduced me, and I immediately hired her as my ghostwriter, and it just was meant to be. So,
oh, that's so amazing. I love that story.
That's my story. Yeah.
I loved it. So that's amazing. So as you said, first step is, why are you writing your book? Or why are you writing full stop? Because at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to force you to write a book, although I think that container is such an amazing transformative container, right? Having it in a book. But so, you don't start with a book. You start with a sentence. You start with a paragraph. You start with a chapter. So like, think about why you're writing, because you're going to keep coming back to that when it gets difficult. And there are going to be times when it gets difficult. So you want that thing to kind of like anchor you into finishing what you start.
Mm-hmm.
So that is number one. Number two is thinking about what you're going to write. Okay. And so you can think about, and I should interject here by saying that I believe, and this is something that I experienced for myself, and maybe I'll tell you that story as well, but I believe that if you are somebody who feels like you want to write a book, it is done. Right? You already know what you're going to write it about, even if you don't know it in the forefront of your mind. Like, it is done. And that is so. When people come and say to me, they really want to write a book, and is that, am I crazy for thinking that? No, you're not. If you feel like you want to write a book, then the book is inside there somewhere.
Yeah,
it's done. So you just need to get it out of your head and onto paper. And I'm gonna tell. I love telling this story because it still surprises me when I think back to what happened when I met my book coach. She and I were in a group together, and when she told me she was a book coach, I was like, "Oh, that's so amazing! I've always wanted to write a book." And she was like, "Really? What about?" And I was like, "I have no idea." And she said the same thing to me. She was like, "Nope. If you know that you want to write a book, it's already in there." And she's like, "And I tell you, I know how to get it out." And I was like, "Sure."
You're like, okay.
All right. Okay. So she had recently run this course that she'd run, and she was selling the replay. So I was like, I will admit that I bought it because I kind of wanted to know. I was half curious and half wanted to prove her wrong, because she said if I didn't walk away with the idea, she would give me money back. And I was like, that's a big promise. Like, okay. So I bought it, I did it, and it worked. It was this meditation that she did, and it kind of like, it's designed to bring that idea from the back of your mind to the front of your mind. And it's just, it was such an amazing process that she took me through. And the idea, and she was right, I already had the idea. I thought it was going to be a TED Talk. I don't know why I thought it was going to be a TED Talk. I don't like public speaking, but I had this idea for years. And it was called Everything is a Thing, and it was going to be my TED Talk. And I realized that I was actually supposed to write a book about it. So that's what I wrote my book about. So I'm just saying that, like, even me, the skeptic, I'm now a convert. And I do believe that if you think you're going to write a book, then you already know what it is. And you just need to find a real process of getting yourself quiet and doing that idea.
Well, it's funny you mentioned something about public speaking as well, because you were in my public speaking academy.
I was. And I never gave that talk, did I? Because it was never supposed to be a talk.
But I do believe that when you write, I mean, every speech before it's spoken, it's written out first.
Always.
And every speech is like, it's like a little mini story. I mean, it is a story, right? So a lot of times too, we see people who, want to be motivational speakers also become authors, and the two very much cross over.
They totally go together.
They still go together. Yeah, because if you think about it too, and maybe this is going to be a thing you talk about, but like, as my book is getting ready to be completed here, like I already know, like I want to do a virtual book tour. I want to, start book circles, and I want to do podcast interviews. And I mean, someday eventually I want to be on the TED Talk stage, but right now, like I want to do I think my book is such a great way to do more public speaking.
Perfect. I love that so much. And I know you would have gone through this when you were writing your book, even with the ghostwriter, and it was choosing what to write. So this is the second one. How do you choose what to write? And this is thinking about what stories you want to tell, what topic to choose. If you feel like you have a million ideas, if you don't feel like you have any, I still believe that if you feel like you want to write a book, you can do it, regardless of, like, I always used to think I didn't have enough ideas. I always just think I haven't got any good ideas. I need more good ideas. Look at this amazing book that I'm reading. This person had all these great ideas. And what I didn't realize is that ideas come through writing, right? And that creative process actually creates more creativity. You will realize that as you write, you will start to get more and more ideas. So the key is starting to write. The key isn't waiting until you have 1,000 ideas. Right? And you could even start by just writing down ideas. Like there's a lady I know she's an author, and I can't remember the guy's name, James Altucher. He wrote a book called How to Become an Idea Machine. And one of the things he said was write down 10 ideas every day. And she does it for writing, and she's a freelance writer, and she said it works really well. Just start to write. There's something about writing that just unlocks the creative process. And so writing is what will give you better ideas. So if you don't think you have enough good ideas, start writing. And if you think you've got too many ideas, start writing, and you'll decide very quickly which ones you want to write about and which ones you don't want to write about. So the trick is start writing. So that is my.
And I'm sure you hear this a lot too, Safiya, but probably a lot of people tell you, "Oh, I'm not a good writer."
Yeah,
I've heard that. Right. I mean, that used to be my story for the longest time. And what I found is, like you said, you just start, and the more you write, like anything else, you get better. It's a skill set. And I used to listen to Elizabeth Gilbert's podcast, Magic Lessons, and she would always tell people to just sit down and write for 10 minutes every day. And it'll do so much for you. You don't think like 10 minutes is going to do a lot, but then what happens is then you start writing for 20 minutes, and you start writing for 30 minutes. And so that's like, I help my coaching clients with that, with so many, with building new habits. I'm like, if you just do it for 10 minutes, you're probably going to go way past 10 minutes, but just set that goal for 10 minutes. So I think it's so great for people who want to get started with writing as well.
Yeah. And that is how you'll become a better writer. Like, you become a better writer by writing. You'll become more creative by writing. You'll have more and better ideas by writing. And one of the things that I find when I work with clients a lot is, like, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to get people to start. And this is something I wrote a blog post about this recently, because I had a friend who was having a similar problem, and I call it the fear of what comes next. Because a lot of times people say they're afraid of writing, but I don't think anybody's afraid of the act of getting a pen and writing something. But it's the fear of sharing, it's the fear of judgment, it's the fear of, what if I tell this story and my mom reads it? Like, it's all of those things that, like, what if I'm a terrible writer? What if I make a spelling typo because the grammar police is out there? What about my high school English teacher? Like, there are all of these fears that you didn't even think you had. And then all of a sudden it's like, as soon as you go to put pen to paper, it's like they're all there talking to you. And I get it. But honestly, like, and I can put the link to the blog post if anybody wants to read it. But the thing you have to do is start writing. And I'm sorry that I can't give you any better advice than that.
Right.
I'm here to cheer you on if you want to start.
Yeah. That was my biggest thing too, is like, as I'm writing this book right now, oh, Lincoln is not happy.
Oh, pumpkin.
Oh, buddy, it's such a hard life. Goodness. So my book, it's called Beyond the White Picket Fence, and it's like literally my most taboo experiences in life. I'm putting them in this book, And that's my biggest fear is like, yeah, what are my friends and family going to think as they, you know, like these, I'm talking about like these sexual experiences I had and the abortion I had at 22 and just things like that. So, you know, that's a real fear that I'm going through right now. And yeah, so I'm curious, like, what's your thoughts around that for someone who's putting these really vulnerable stories out there and we're just, yeah, so afraid.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like I had something like that in my book as well. Nothing like your experiences, but I wanted to write a little bit about my mom. And a lot of people are like, I'm comfortable saying it now. My mom took her own life when I was like 9, and for so long I wasn't even able to admit that to people. Like I didn't know myself until, like, my family didn't tell me until I was a lot older, until I was like a 16, 17, and you know, it's not something that they talk about because mental illness is such a taboo here. It's such a complete taboo. But I just wanted to put it in there. I wasn't talking about her. It was nothing about her. It was about my own, like how the experience affected me. But I have sisters, right? And I'm like, their friends might be reading it and they might not want their friends to, you know, they might not have told their friends. I mean, I've told my friends, but maybe they haven't told their friends, and maybe they don't want it to be out there in this book about your parent and your mom had mental illness and stuff like that. So I was worried about that too. So the things I have to say to that, the first one is that if you're telling a story and there's somebody else in the story, like it might be an ex-boyfriend or your mom, or you might be worried about that person reading it, focus on the fact that the story is always about you. Right? It's about you. It's what your experience is, from your lens, it's from your perspective, and make it about you. Do not make it about anybody else, right? Make it clear that you're talking about your own experience and you're telling this story for a purpose. And this is something that I talk to clients about. Like, think about, why are you including this story? What message are you trying to get across with the story? It's normally about your own transformation, your own experience, and put the focus on that. Don't put the focus on the thing. You can if you want, but like that's not really what the focus is. The focus is really you, your experience, your transformation. Zoom in on that and then come out from there, and you will be able to frame it right. And remember, and I always tell people, write like nobody's looking over your shoulder, because most of the time nobody is. If they are, just message me afterwards and I've got a whole different set of advice for you. But or not, just write like nobody's looking over your shoulder, and then decide what to do with it. Because sometimes I think these stories are so huge in your head. And when you write them down, it's like, okay, it's out now. Now I can decide what to do with it. Do I want to share the story at all? How do I want to share it? Do I just want to share a piece of it? Do I just want to share enough of it to give an idea of the gist without sharing the whole thing? You know, do I want to share it all in the book? You know, like there's an author that I read, Ash Amberjay, and she just released a book called The Middle Finger Project, and she had this extended version of her book, but you had to like email her to get, and it had like some more juicier bits in it. Like there's so many different ways to do it, but you have to start by getting out of your head, because when it's in your head, it seems big and it seems scary and it seems huge, and it just, you have to get it out of your head first, and then you can decide what you want to do with it. One of the stories in my book, which involved a relationship and a guy, I wrote the story and I decided to just change his name. So I said, let's just call the guy Kevin. And went through, I changed his name, I took it out. He was actually one of the first people who bought my book. I'm not sure yet he even knows who right? I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to tell it in its entirety, and it wasn't about him. It was about me. So I just changed his name, and that was fine. Right? Or you can write it as a fiction. There's so many things you can do with it, but you can't do anything with it in your head. Right. So you got to get it out.
And that's great advice. And I've heard that before too. It's like, get it out of your head, get it onto your first draft, and then you can always delete it later. You can always change names, change details later, But just the first, like you said, first step is actually getting it out of your head.
So that's a great one. So, were you like, were there any stories that, I know you said your stories are quite taboo, but like, were there any that you were like really not sure you wanted to tell? You don't have to tell me what it is, but I'm just curious now.
Yeah, the ones that I think I'm not going to tell are actually about my mom. I'm sure you hear this a lot, but for some reason, like the family stories and there was one about my brother coming out of the closet, and I don't know. I feel like I'm not ready to release the family stories quite yet, and that's okay.
That's fine.
I don't have to share everything.
No, and that's the other thing. Like, like my coach and my editor were like, once you've written one book, it gets pretty addictive. So like, you don't need to tell all the stories right now. You will totally get a chance to share those stories in your next book or in your next one. So,
oh my God.
Sorry. If you don't want to tell them, it's fine. Leave them out.
You're so right. Like I'm already like planning my second book, and I haven't even finished the first one. It's kind of like tattoos. Once you get one, you don't stop.
Completely. So that's the other thing. If you're not ready to tell it, don't tell it. Don't let anybody tell you have to tell it. You don't. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's your book, your rules. That's the beauty of writing a book. Your book, your rules.
Totally.
Right. So that's the second point, and that's kind of deciding what you want to write, what story. So the first one was finding your why you write. This next one was deciding what you want to write. The next one now, we talk about how you're writing. And Krista already gave you a little hint, but one of the ways you can write is you can get a ghostwriter. You can outsource it. Obviously, if you're going to do that, don't call me because I am not a ghostwriter. But that is a perfectly amazing way to get your book out there. And there are a lot of popular people who have ghostwriters. So you are in good company if you do that. If you're worried about it, don't. Right? Like,
Safiya, can you, because when I was new, this was confusing to me, but can you explain to our audience, like, what is the difference between like a ghostwriter and an editor and a book coach?
Absolutely. So I will start with a book coach. A book coach is, or they're not, they should be a coach who is just, like any coach does, they're partnering with you through the process to meet your goal, right? So for me, I tend to do it with people around, like I said, around their confidence as a writer, around their confidence to share, their visibility, that type of thing. The lady who coached me, her business is now taking people end to end for self-publishing, but she's also a qualified coach as well. The common denominator is this is somebody who is here to walk you through a process with your goal. You're still writing, right? You're still a person who's meeting all the milestones. You're still going to hire your editor. You're still going to do, decide on your cover and whatever. And I, as a coach, am there to keep you going, to cheer you on, to give you the tough love when you need it, and to ask you the questions. If you want somebody to sit and ask you the questions that you need to bring out some of the details of those stories, I can do that too, right? I can like read it, as in give you feedback on it, but I don't do any writing as a coach. I'm just here to really be your partner in crime, to go on that adventure with you, right? An editor now is somebody who will take the book after you've written it, and they will get it ready for the publication. They'll get it ready to be read by the publication. Now, there are different types of editors. There's some editors, like if you came to them with a big stack of blog posts that you'd written and you wanted it turned into a book, there's an editor who can do that for you. And I can't remember what they're called. The name will come back to me. But they will actually do the content for you, and they'll pull together writing that you already have. Or you can do something like I wrote the whole book and I sent to the editor, and she just checked for continuity. She checked for continuity of voice. Like when you start writing the book, you're going to sound completely different by the end of it than you do in the beginning of it. That's perfectly normal. And so she'll go through and check for that continuity. She'll make sure that you stayed on topic, right? So many questions like, who was this book for? And like what's the main thing you want the reader to walk away with, and all of those things. And then she goes through the book and she ensures that I have stayed on point, right? So it's continuity. It is continuity of voice, continuity of the story, is making sure that the facts that you start with at the beginning are the facts that you're ending with, like just making sure the whole thing is cohesive. That's what your editor does. And if they're good, then what they give you will sound like a better version of you. They're not there to change your voice or to make it sound different. They're just there to bring the best out of the book for you. A ghostwriter is somebody who will actually write the book for you. And some people are ghostwriters and editors. Some people will ghostwrite and then they'll pass it on to an editor. Depends on their, how they work. But what they do is they will sit and they will interview you. Long, detailed, in-depth interviews, because they want to know not only who's the book for and what their takeaways are and what stories you want to share, but they want to get a feel for your voice. Because the whole thing about a ghostwriter is that they're supposed to be invisible. Most people who publish with a ghostwriter do not, that person's name is nowhere on the book, unless they've edited it, right? Your name is on the front of the book. So it has to sound like you. So a lot of those detailed interviews that they do are there to get a feel for your voice and how you tell those stories and how you get your message across. Because if you think about it, if you are like Krista, you write this book and you think, maybe I'll do a coaching program around this, or maybe I want to go and do a TED Talk about this. You don't want people to read the book and then hear Krista and be like, this doesn't sound like Krista. Like when I read this book, this person sounded, dark and edgy, and Krista's like, la, 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 la. Like, this is a different, you don't want that difference between the voice in the book and who you are as a person. And so a really good ghostwriter should be able to duplicate that. So that's what a ghostwriter, they actually write the book for you, but they do it based on your stories, based on your voice, based on everything. So they should be really doing some in-depth interviews with you. And that's why their price point is a little higher, because it's the time not only to write the book, but the time to interview you and integrate all of the stuff that you tell them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, for explaining that. And I hope that for everyone watching this, that's helpful, because for the longest time I was like, and when you're so new to writing, everything's like just so overwhelming and confusing. So
yes.
For anyone watching here, if you're like, so new in this process and you are like asking yourself those questions, it's okay. It's normal. The writing world, it has its own rules. It has its own energy. It has its own language, just like the world of coaching. I always tell new coaches, it's like you're going to learn like a foreign language, essentially, when you become a life coach. And it's very similar when you start writing a book. It really is its own world.
It really is. And that's fine. And ask questions. I always tell people there are no stupid questions. Ask them. If you have the question, somebody else has the question. So back to how to write, like I said, is you can have a ghostwriter. You can, have somebody like a developmental editor. That's what they call, to pull together all your blog posts, right? You can write it yourself. And you can use your own blog posts if you want to write from content that you've already written. You can have, dig out that journal that you've been writing in for the last few months and dig out all the juicy stories that are in there. If you want to write about what you're not ready to write yet, as those ideas come to you, write them down in the journal, so that when it comes to writing the book, you've got this journal full of ideas and you know what you're going to do, right? So that's a great way to start collecting ideas. And if you're worried about the actual writing process, and else I can stick it in the comments, but I actually did a little quiz that helps you to identify your writing style, because some people are very intuitive. Like, I'm a very intuitive writer. So no plans for me, no plans about plans, no Trello boards with 10 different topics. Like, I don't write like that. I just write, right? And there's some people who write that. There's some people who need to plan it very down to the last fine point, and plan the paragraphs and plan the sentences and have little writing prompts. That's cool too. I have one client who she edits herself too much when she writes. So she does it. She just does it on her phone. She picks the phone up. She has a text-to-speech app, speech-to-text. That's what it's called. Yeah. And she just talks it, and it comes out on the computer, and then she edits it. Right? So there's so many ways you can do it. And if you're interested, like I said, you can take my quiz. There are lots of different ways you can write. And like I said, I'll drop the link to the quiz in the comments, but you can take the quiz, and there's lots of tips there for different actual ways to get the words out of your head. But however they come out, bring them out. If you have to speak them, speak them. If you have to have a conversation with somebody, do that. If you have to just write intuitively and just get them out, do that. But like, there's no wrong way to write your book.
Yeah, perfect.
Got
Okay,
it.
great advice. Great advice.
Yeah, and the last thing I will say, I want you to think about. So far we've had find your why, decide what you want to write,
Mm-hmm.
figure out how you're going to write, and lastly, who are you writing for and how are you going to get in front of them? Because at some point, you're going to want somebody to read this book. You put all of your love, all of your heart, all of your soul into it. Who's going to read it? Who's it for? Is it for your clients? Is it for, your the wider world of women that you want to share your message with, or men, or couples, or like who's going to benefit from this book, and how are you going to get in front of them? Are you so first of all, you need to build your platform. Are you going to be sharing on social media? Your coaches, so you're very familiar with building your platform as a coach, and something similar is required when you're writing your book. Make sure you tease it. I'm writing this book. I remember Krista probably doesn't, it's probably a distant memory for Krista, but when I first met Krista, I remember seeing Krista in these very risque photos in front of a white picket fence. The first thing I saw was Krista in these photos. And she was like, I think I'm going to put one of these on the cover of my book. And I'm pretty sure you haven't even started writing the book yet, right? But you're teasing it, right? You're teasing it. People are going to be like, oh my gosh, that book, that sounds like fun. I need to write that book. And that's what we wanted to. We wanted
two things about that. I did put that picture on the cover of my book. So just so you all know, it is going to be a naked picture of me, because it's all about just being raw and sharing your authentic truth and nothing to hide behind. And second of all, people love to be a part of your journey and your process. Like, they like that, I think, even better than the end result, right? Just like us, the same thing. It's so often we like working towards the thing, and then it's like, once we get the thing, it's like, So yeah, I think it's such a great idea to let people be a part of this journey with you, and talk about it on social media, and create polls, and share like I did. I had like 4 different pictures. I was like, okay guys, which one should I put on my book? And that's such a great way to do free marketing as well.
Absolutely. I did not know you had decided to put that. I remember those pictures so clearly. That's so funny. I remember that so clearly. And you see, I've never forgotten that, even after all these years of we've got to know each other in different contexts. You've had a baby, like all of those things. And I still remember Krista said she was going to put this picture on the front of her book. Mm-hmm. So, those are the things that stick out in people's minds, right? So you have to really get in front of them. Social media, you can blog, right? And you can do that on your own website. You can do it through Medium. You can do it through your newsletters. I'm such a huge proponent of blogging, not as a thing in itself, but like just the practice of writing and sharing is that building that muscle. Because when you write and share a book, that's like a blog multiplied by 1,000,000, right? And so just building that muscle of, I wrote something, I shared it, people read it, I didn't die. I wrote something, I shared it, people read it, I didn't die. Like, just get over that, because you're gonna need that when you write the book. So I'm a huge proponent of blogging and sharing, whether it's on social media, whether it's on Medium, whether it's on your website. That's a great way to build up that writing and sharing muscle. And I'm so like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I think I'm going to have a little course on that sometime later this year about writing and sharing. So that's a whole nother story, but that's a plan, right? And then think about how you're going to get the physical book, if you want a physical book, or the ebook into the hands of the people. Are you going to self-publish? Are you going to do a book proposal and try to get a traditional publishing company to do it? Are you going to do a hybrid, which is where it's a publishing company, but there's a fee for you, and they will help you with the publishing process, and they might help you with the marketing, but you have to ask them how much help they're going to give you with that, because some of them give more help than others. That's my understanding. So know which company you're working with and how much they're going to help you. So, decide how you're going to get it in front of those people, and then do it. Just do it. Just go out and write that book, and it's going to be amazing.
You know, something that shocked me too was when I was interviewing my editor and ghostwriter, and I asked her, like, how long is this going to take before the book is done? And she's like, well, that's up to you. And she said, you know, some people, she always recommended like 3 to 6 months. She said some people take longer, and she's like, I had a client who took a couple of years, and I was like, what? A couple of years? And you know what's funny is I'm now that person. I've been working on this book for over 2 years, and there's some times where I wish that it would have been done a long time ago, and I could just be done and over with it. But there's another part of me that's been enjoying taking my time working on it as well, because like I've changed so much, and I feel like the book that I would have released a couple years ago would be completely different than the one I'm getting ready to release. So I'm just curious, like, how would you address that? Like, if someone came to you and say, like, you know, how long should this whole process take with writing my book? Like,
and I will tell you, Krista, you just raised such an incredible point, right? Because writing a book, no matter what form it takes, it will actually change you as a person, right? Just like how transformational coaching is, like writing a book is that transformational. And so it takes as long as it takes, but you're correct. The book that you would write now is different to the book that you would have written 2 years ago. And if you spoke to your ghostwriter 2 years ago, then the book that you're looking at now, you may want to make some changes, right? So just be okay with that. That's not right or wrong, but just be okay with that. If you know that the longer it takes, the more you're going to want to change it. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. It took me about 3 months to write it, 3 months to edit it, but it was a whole year before it was published. Almost a year, right? And that was, you know, boring logistical stuff. I live in the Caribbean, like no good excuse except that it's just, things just take longer here. You know, I self-published through Amazon. To even get the proof copy from Amazon to me took several weeks. So I had to allow a lot of lead out time because I knew that things would take longer, and it worked out fine, right? But I would say, like, and this is going to sound a bit odd, so I do apologize if you guys think I'm crazy, but I feel like once you start to write a book, it takes on a life of its own. Do not believe, I should say, that when it happens is exactly when it's supposed to happen. I know that might not fill you with any encouragement, but that is the best advice I can give you. Once you put that pen to paper, you are creating an entity that it has its own life. And sometimes, like, there was times when I was self-publishing my book and, oh my goodness, why is it taking so long? And then it was right on time.
Right. Just with same thing with building a life coaching business. There's times where you're going to just be like, what the fuck? Like, I feel like this should have happened sooner. Why is this taking forever? And it's like, you really have to surrender and let go. And just like writing a book and building your coaching business, it's your artwork that you're putting out into the world, and you don't want to rush it if it's not meant to be rushed. And we kind of just have to let the pieces fall into place, which, you know, for us, we want results quickly. We want
immediately
fast. And so I think it's a good idea to, like, let people know from the start and set realistic expectations of, like, yeah, this is not going to be done in like 2 weeks. Like, this is something that takes months.
If it is, it may not be what you want it to be, right? Like, I would say I don't want to say that it takes as long as it takes, but I want to say, like, don't rush to do it. It's okay to I pushed back my launch date a couple of times. It's okay. You know, people do that. There's a couple of people I know that had launch dates right at the beginning of coronavirus, and I can promise you they pushed back that launch date too. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying this thing took longer than I expected, and it's going to be so worth the wait. But do not rush it. A book will not be rushed. Trust me. Once you start writing this book, it takes on a life of its own. And I know that might just sound strange, but you'll see. You'll see when you start to write. This book will take on a life of its own, and don't rush it. That's all I will say. Do not rush it.
All right. So did we already do the 4 points or?
Good. So I can recover them again. The first is to find your why.
Okay.
The second is to decide what you're going to write. The third is to think about how you're going to write. And lastly, who are you writing for and how are you going to get in front of them?
And if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section.
Please do.
Me and Safiya, who is a published author, I am a soon-to-be published author, we want to answer your questions. This is a safe space to
definitely.
Yeah, so just to highlight what Safiya said is she is starting a writing circle. She's done this a couple times already, has filled them up, and is, really successful with helping women like yourself to, get started with writing. And the biggest thing that I'm hearing is to make sure that you continue writing. It's so easy to start and then drop off because you're getting overwhelmed or unmotivated, or you're like, I just don't know what to do from here. So essentially, like, if you really want to take yourself seriously as an author and get this book out into the world, you're going to want to join Safiya's writing circle. And I know that she's already got a lot of the spots filled, and it's I looked at the price, it's really affordable. Safiya will put the link in the comments so you can see more of the info. But I mean, I would highly, highly recommend joining this. And I loved what you were telling me, Safiya, a couple weeks ago, is that nobody should write alone. Nobody should write alone. I totally, writing can feel so solitary, but you should not write alone. Right.
I can give you 2 pieces of advice. That would be one of them.
Definitely. And same thing with building your life coaching business. Like anything where we're putting like our soul projects out into the world, you don't want to do that alone, because it's going to bring up all these feelings and these emotions. And I've even started to get in my own head with this current book that I'm working on. Like I told you, like, oh my gosh, like, the people in my story, what are they going to think if they read this? And do people even want to like read these parts of my story? And it's so easy to get in your head. And so it's like, you have to have the accountability, and you have to have someone that can pull you out of those stories and get you back on track, because it's so easy to get off track.
Really easy.
Like,
so,
yeah.
I recommend never write alone. And if you want to have my group to join, like I'll drop a link in the comments, and I would absolutely love to have you there.
Yeah, you guys have to work with Safiya. She's incredible. She's absolutely amazing and so talented at this, and has written her own book, so obviously she's going to be able to help you through the whole process. And I do, every step of the way. And let's see, we had someone ask a question. So did you outline your book before you started writing, or did you just start writing?
I did a rough outline. Oh, I love that you asked this question. So I definitely did a rough outline. I had a very rough idea of what the sections were going to be and what was going to be contained in the chapters. But I will say that, as I said earlier, when I say a book takes on a life of its own, I was not joking. So I think that if you're somebody who feels the need to have the structure, have a rough outline, but be ready to pivot, because sometimes the story takes you somewhere that you didn't expect to go, right? So leave space for that. Leave space for going off on an adventure, going off on a tangent. Leave space for realizing, this story doesn't fit better. This one fits a lot better. Like, you don't want an outline that you feel like you have to stick too rigidly to, because as you write, as I said, more ideas will come. You'll want to make changes, and you don't want that process to be stressful, right? So just have a rough outline, but be ready to pivot, be ready to go where the book takes you.
Well, anything else that you want to add, Safiya, before we close out tonight?
There is one more thing, and it's something that I always tell people when they're writing, especially a book. Don't look back, right? When you're writing, write forward. Don't start second guessing yourself. Don't look back. Don't try to make it perfect. It's not going to be perfect, especially not that first draft. Like, it's not. Just write it. When you get to the end of it, it will all come together, and then you can decide to go back and make whatever changes you want. But whatever you do, just keep writing. That's what I would say.
I love that advice, because the first draft that my editor and I created together, so messy. Like I was reading through and I was like, oh gosh, like, I just remember like feeling like overwhelmed and like, why is this? I don't know, it just kind of felt all over the place. And then, as we're going back and forth and editing together, it's starting to get cleaned up and starting to flow better and sound so much nicer. But you're right, you do have to just have that really messy first draft. It's not going to be perfect the first time. And that's why, this takes time as well, is because you have to go back and forth between, if you're working with a team, and it takes some time to go through it and edit and clean things up. And again, it's a process. It really is. It's good to, again, set your expectations, and to know that first draft is by no means going to be perfect in any way.
And it's Elizabeth Gilbert again, I believe, who calls it the shitty first draft, because like sometimes it is. And that's fine. It's supposed to be. It's the process of just getting the thoughts out. And once they're out, then you can start to put them into place, right? You might be writing, and this is why I tell people, don't go back. You're writing your first chapter, you're writing this paragraph, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't sound right. You could go back a million times and try to correct it, right? Or you can keep writing. And when you get to the 8th chapter, you realize, oh, this is where that paragraph belongs.
Right.
So don't go back and try to perfect it as you go along, because to me, like some of the best advice I ever heard somebody give me was like expecting your first draft to be really good is like taking flour out of the fridge and taking a spoonful of it and eating it and expecting it to taste like cake. You just can't, right? There's so many more elements that have to go into it.
Right.
So let's keep going forward, and it will come together. I promise you. It may not feel that way, but it absolutely will.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that cake analogy.
So true.
One last thing too that I didn't add in at the beginning is the thing when we were talking about why you're writing your book. It's okay, buddy. He's been doing so good.
He's been great. I'm just so impressed. Like I thought he'd fallen asleep. He's so quiet.
Is as a coach too, this is such a good way to find clients. This is, what I was told, and I am seeing this, and I can't wait to get my book out there, because like what my process is going to be is that I'm going to give my book out to anyone who gets, books a discovery call with me. It's going to be like a thank you gift. And, what's going to happen is that people are going to, read these stories, and I have so many call to actions in the book to work with me. And it's really like a behind the scenes of people getting to know you. And then it's after that, it's so much easier for people to want to work with you. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. I think this book is going to make it so much easier for me to find coaching clients. I've read people's books before, and then I've hired them afterwards, because I'm like, I feel like I know them. I feel like I've already worked with them, and I want to continue on with the process.
Yeah. And that's just it. Like, I think a book is so much more than a book. And I think this is something that every day I'm still learning how transformative the process is. It's transformative for you, for your life, for your business. People view you differently when you're a published author, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. She wrote a whole book. I love this. Like, it just shines a different light on you. And so I would say, if you're definitely considering it, totally do it. Totally do it.
It's so worth it. So worth it. All right. Well, I gotta go take care of this little boy before he has another meltdown. But Safiya, thank you so much. This was such a delight, and I hope for everyone watching this that you found this useful. And we'll include all the links below. So Safiya's writing circle. Also, Safiya, we can put all your social media channels as well.
Absolutely. Follow me on Instagram, and I'm going to put my latest blog post there, which is actually about dealing with the fear of judgment, right? Because remember, I was talking earlier about the fear of what's next. So, like, you write this thing and you're afraid of that high school English teacher and all of that. So I did definitely do a post on that, and I'm going to drop the link in there if anybody wants to read a bit of my writing.
Brilliant. And then the link for the quiz as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thanks for having me. Good night, Lincoln. Bye. See you.
Say bye, Lincoln.
Yeah.
Bye.
He's too cute. Oh my goodness.